Alright, I see this question all the time. How do you airbrush gunpla? So the first thing you're going to need is an air compressor. It can be pancake style, hot dog style, or you can get an airbrush one. Don't really matter. You're going to plug it in. You're going to hit the on switch. If it's one of these bigger ones, there is a release valve underneath. It's brass. You want to make sure that's tightened up or all the air will leak out. Make sure that you open it up and release all that air pressure when you're done so it doesn't rust. This is your air pressure regulator. Typically for airbrushing, I suggest anything under 30. You can't really see here, but I tend to do 15 to 25, maybe 30. You can really control it and play around with it and figure out what works best for you. I got a 1/4-inch adapter to another adapter that goes to a hose that I got at Harbor Freight to a Master Airbrush brand airbrush. This is a dual action gravity fed, and you can get this off of Amazon for like $20, I think. Basically, and the way I do it is you've got two main types of paint, acrylic and enamel, and you can use primer, but I don't really use primer. It probably would make my paint look a bit better, but I don't have any real experience with it. You're going to want to mask. The fumes can get pretty obnoxious. 91% rubbing alcohol, isopropyl. Wait, no. Wrong thing. There we go. You can get this literally anywhere. For enamel paints, you can use Tester's brand, but I'm not a big fan of that because enamel-based, you've got to mix with odorless mineral spirits. That's an actual paint thinner. I use that because anything else is really too obnoxious and kind of dangerous. These are acrylic-based. What you would do is, you can see my ratio on here with Tamiya paints. 1 part substrate or 1 part paint, which would be this. And then 2 parts that, what I mean by that is I would take up to, 1 part of this, and mix 2 parts of this, like I guess 2 times as much, together, mix them, put them in here, make sure everything's good, and pour that into my airbrush, and from there, all you gotta do is just airbrush. I guess just play around with it on something you're not afraid to mess up the first time that you do it. You build up a lot of confidence. This is your flow, so the further forward it is, the less paint will come out. The further back it is, the more paint will come out. Really, it's just for detail, I guess, or how much paint you really want to use. Past painting, you're gonna want to clean out afterwards. I use Tamiya. I do a couple of different things. I first run rubbing alcohol through it, then Tamiya X20A thinner, and then more rubbing alcohol behind it, and I make sure everything's dry, either with a Q-tip or with one of these cleaning brushes, but I'm not a fan of those because there's a little needle in the bottom of this. I can't really get the focus on, but there's a little needle in here that controls the flow, and you don't want to mess that up because then your airbrush is pretty much dead. For enamel-based paints, I do a 1-to-1 of mineral spirit to paint substrate, and then for acrylic, I do 1 part acrylic to 2 parts rubbing alcohol. You cannot mix rubbing alcohol with, this is what happens if you mix rubbing alcohol with enamel paints. It just conglomerates and it doesn't mix at all. That was my first attempt before I had learned anything because I had to teach myself all of this. Afterwards, this is what I use for top coating. To top coat, well, actually, after painting, I would panel line, which I've got markers that you just kind of dab where you want to put the panel line stuff, and the ink just kind of flows where you want it to. You can wipe it off with your finger, which usually ends up like that, or a Q-tip. But afterwards, you'd let that dry. I take matte finish. This is Krylon matte finish because it's non-yellowing. You get mixed results with it. Sometimes it can come out a little white or dusty looking. So if you want a real one, you can use Mr. Hobby or something like that. But that's not really an option for me because it's just too much effort to import it and too expensive. This is $4 a can. But what I do is I heat up just some warm tap water and let that sit in it for a little while. That really helps it loosen up the molecules a bit. And you get a finer spray when you do that. Make sure you shake it up a lot. And before you spray that on your kit, spray it just somewhere else to make sure there might be an initial spurt, and you don't want all that splatter getting all over your gunpla. The next thing is set up a paint booth. This is just some cardboard boxes, but it'll get messy if you're not careful. I mean, you can see I've got paint all over this. Really, I've got... Yeah, you can see where I actually keep that down. And then I usually have a little rack over here. That rack with the plastic on top to let things dry. But the next thing, and I haven't tested this yet, so don't call me for it, but I heard you can use Pledge Revive It Floor Gloss for a gloss top coat. And you mix this 1-to-1 mixture with water. And when I say you mix it with water, you want to use distilled water. No tap water. It can damage your airbrush. And that's all I can really think of that you want to know. When you clean out your airbrush, go to Harbor Freight or somewhere and get a little jar like this. They've got a tip for you to just stick the airbrush in and just spray everything out of it. So any excess that you have, you can put in there. Typically, if I have excess in the chamber, I put it in a little jar and I can save it for later and just mix it up. Don't mix all your paints at once because you never know what you're going to need to do. I mean, I'm pretty much out of Tamiya red, so I'll probably use that for something, but that's all I can think of. My only other advice would be if you want to get a metallic coat, I would either buy a straight up metallic mix. I would either buy a metallic mix, and if you can't find the color that you're looking for in a metallic mix, I do a first coat of silver and then cover that silver with a clear version. See, this is clear red over chrome silver, and then gloss coat that and you get a nice finish. Other than that, wear safety glasses, make sure you get a mask, and be safe. That's all the advice I can really give you. Good luck.